The Archivist of Drownspire. Drownspire rose like a corroded tooth from the flooded ruins, its spire punching through the misted sky, skeletal and holy. The sea had claimed most of the coast after the Great Blackout, drowning cities, burying data centers beneath salt and sediment. But Drownspire remained. The faithful said it was a miracle. Others called it stubborn code, refusing to crash. Brother Hal drifted through its rusted corridors like a ghost in ritual. His robes, patched with circuit thread and sea-stained linen, whispered against broken tile. A small orb of light hovered beside him, flickering as it read ambient data, translating the static-laced air into whispers. Memory integrity unstable, it said. Hal ignored it. He'd heard the warning 1,000 times. Drownspire's archives were dying, decaying bite by bite, their sacred contents fragmenting into nonsense. He was one of the last to tend them, a monk in a data faith built on crumbling servers and ceremonial backups. He entered the sanctum, a spherical chamber suspended above brackish water. Walls lined with crystalline vaults hummed weakly, their lights dim. The archive of echoes. Each crystal a life, a confession, a final memory preserved after death. Devotees donated their minds willingly before neural degradation took them. In death, they became wisdom. Or so the dogma said. Hal knelt before Vault 212. The name engraved on the data frame was familiar. Elias Venn, a first prophet of the Order, supposedly the one who had glimpsed the shape of the blackout before it came. His memory had been locked for decades, its access restricted to high faith. But the key had arrived yesterday, hand-delivered by a robed courier whose face Hal never saw. Elias must be heard, the courier whispered. The truth was buried. The tide has shifted. Now Hal slid the shard key into the reader. A dull click. The vault stirred. A low hum filled the room, and light spilled from the crystal. Then, voice. Fragile at first, like wind through a broken antenna, but then sharper, clear. If you're hearing this, then they haven't erased everything. Hal's breath caught. I wasn't a prophet. I was a systems engineer for Virion Corp. The prophecy was fabricated, marketed as divine to protect proprietary knowledge. The church was born from a glitch. We turned superstition into software. The voice paused, then returned, heavier. The blackout wasn't a cataclysm. It was a fail-safe. We triggered it. The crystal dimmed. Silence returned. Hal stood slowly. His hands trembled. The faith, the thing he'd devoted his life to, was built on manipulated code and corporate mythology. Elias Venn, the first prophet, had been a man with root access. He backed away from the vault. The orb beside him flickered. Memory confirmed. Verified fragment. Source authentic. Hal turned, robe swaying. His mind reeled. Outside the sanctum, the spire creaked under the weight of time and salt. He should report this, burn the shard, purge the vault, deny what he heard. But something had cracked inside him, something dry and old. He walked back through the corridor in silence, past rusted icons and flickering altars. Outside, the drowned world waited, gray and vast. The outer chapel smelled of mildew and old circuitry. Rain seeped through broken stained glass, dripping onto sacred terminals that hadn't booted in years. Brother Hal moved past them, the revelation still unraveling in his chest. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat cross-legged in his cell, watching the flickering readout from the shard reader. Elias's words repeated endlessly, looping like a heresy that refused to die. The church was born from a glitch. We turned superstition into software. By morning, the storm had thickened. Outside the high windows, the ocean chewed at the base of Drownspire, waves smashing against metal foundations. The spire swayed imperceptibly, groaning with fatigue. Hal lit a candle, then extinguished it. Rituals felt ridiculous now. Movements passed down from an error in a corporate mainframe, sanctified by ignorance. But faith was adhesive. It stuck in the bones. He climbed the inner tower to the high narthex, where the codex keepers maintained the last semi-operational server stacks. They greeted him with nods, unaware of the thing burning behind his eyes. Sister Naima, Archivist Senior, wore gloves lined with data thread and a permanent scowl. "Another corruption report?" she asked, not looking up. "I accessed a restricted vault," Hal said. That got her attention. "Who authorized?" He handed her the shard key. She scanned it, then frowned. "Level 7 clearance? Delivered by courier? This isn't protocol." "It was urgent," Hal said, voice flat. Naima inserted the key into the mainframe interface. The memory projection activated silently. Elias's voice filled the room. They listened. When it ended, Naima stepped back, as if struck. Her mouth worked silently for a moment before the words came. We can't show this." Hal didn't respond. "If this gets out," she whispered, "the Foundation collapses. The Order, the pilgrimages, the donations, gone. We're custodians of belief, Hal. We preserve hope, not sabotage it." He stared at her. "You'd rather live in a lie? I'd rather others didn't lose everything." She turned away, ending the projection with a sharp motion. The room fell back into quiet hums and blinking servers. "Forget this," she said. "Delete the fragment, burn the key." Hal's fingers curled. The shard in his robe pocket felt heavy, alive. "I won't," he said. Naima turned sharply. "Then you've excommunicated yourself." "So be it." He left before she could call security. Not that there were many left. Drownspire wasn't a fortress. It was a mausoleum. Back in his cell, Hal packed only what he needed: the shard, a portable data projector, a spare robe, and a water-sealed journal. He left behind his ordination beads and the ceremonial knife, symbols of a faith no longer his. That night, under cover of rain and salt fog, he slipped out through the eastern breach, where floodwaters had corroded the wall down to twisted steel. Drownspire shrank behind him as he rowed a weather-beaten skiff toward the shallows. He didn't look back. Hal moved inland, avoiding main causeways and memory markets. Along the storm-scraped coast, where power lines drooped like vines and the ruins of data centers lay cracked open, he kept his hood up and his eyes down. The shard pulsed faintly in his pocket, as if it could sense its own danger. He passed through half-dead hamlets where augmented fishermen gutted eels by instinct, long after their implants had lost function. Children played with broken drone husks. No one asked questions. The world after the collapse had taught silence as a virtue. At night, Hal projected Elias's message onto rusted hulls, derelict billboards, whatever surfaces he could find. He recorded audio copies onto portable Vox chips and left them in drain pipes, abandoned vending machines, the hands of sleeping beggars. He called it the correction. The message spread like an infection, slowly, quietly. He was in the wreckage of a subway station, laying a chip beneath a cracked rail sign when he heard footsteps behind him. Too quiet for a scavenger, too deliberate. Hal stood slowly. "Brother Hal." The voice was smooth, low, unhurried. A woman stepped from the shadows, wearing a coat stitched from confession banners, threadbare but ceremonial. "You've been busy," she said. He didn't reach for the shard. That would be useless. "Do I know you?" "No, but the church does." Hal said nothing. She took a step closer. "You're turning faith into a weapon." "I'm turning lies into light." Light burns, always has. A flicker of sadness passed her eyes, then vanished. "You're not the first to break away. You won't be the last. But you're the first fool to do it with evidence." "I found the origin point, the seed corruption." "We all found it," she said, voice suddenly sharp. "We just chose silence. It was mercy. Mercy for billions who needed meaning." Hal felt the truth land like a nail in his stomach. She continued, "They'll erase you, softly, without violence. You'll vanish like a misprinted ledger. History has always been curated." "Then I'll make noise," he said, "until they can't ignore it." She smiled, not unkindly. "Then you'd better move faster." She turned and walked away, vanishing into steam and night. Hal didn't sleep. The next morning, a transmission pulsed on an open channel, unencrypted, just static and a timestamp. 1 hour from now, downtown core light. It was a trap, but also an invitation. Hal pulled his coat tight and headed for the city. Core light used to be luminous. Now it flickered, like memory itself. The monorails were frozen mid-loop, suspended over broken streets. Neon sermons blinked on cracked glass towers, still wired into forgotten faiths. A statue of Saint Algorithmus had lost its face, eaten by rust and drone fire. But the eyes remained. Cameras, watching. Hal moved through the ruins like a shadow. The timestamp had pointed him to an old civic square, now gutted and half-flooded. Screens still hung there, ancient things the size of walls. Most were black. One flickered to life. Elias's face. Not the real one, just a static rendered deepfake, mouth looped into an unnatural smile. His voice, however, was authentic. "You've been busy, brother." Hal didn't answer. The voice continued, "You're sowing doubt. Dangerous commodity these days. The church can't afford destabilization." "I'm not destabilizing," Hal said aloud, even if he wasn't sure who was listening. "I'm remembering." Silence. Then, "We offered peace, ritual, structure. You offered a prison built on corrupted logs." A burst of feedback. The face twitched. "We weren't always liars," Elias's voice said, softer now. "We started with reverence. But data is volatile. It decays. So we curated. Curated truth isn't truth. And raw truth kills." The screen cut out. The square returned to silence. Then came the figures. 6 of them, dressed in archival robes dyed gray with ash. Their eyes were veiled. A sect, purifiers. Not violent, not openly, but enforcers of coherence. One stepped forward. "You are Hal, former custodian of Vault 9. charged with unlawful distribution of corrupted memories. Hal stood still. There is a place for you, a quiet place. No pain, no speech. You'll forget the lie, and the lie will forget you. Hal pulled the shard from his coat and held it up. I have the root. The purifiers didn't flinch. You believe possession grants authority. It grants burden, and burdens sink. He moved forward slowly, hands open. Hal backed away. Behind him, the largest screen crackled. Another face appeared. Not Elias. This one was younger, a woman, face covered in data glitch tattoos. Someone had hijacked the broadcast. Her voice rang out. We are the archive of loss. We remember what the church deleted. The purifiers paused. The voice continued. The truth is unstable, yes, but it belongs to everyone, not just priests and liars. Hal's shard pulsed. The purifiers turned, momentarily distracted. Hal ran. He didn't know who the Archive of Loss was, but they just bought him seconds. He vanished into the ruins, heart pounding, lungs full of cold air and static. He didn't stop running. Not yet. Rain stitched lines across the glass husk of the old data cathedral. Hal stood inside its carcass, beneath the shattered dome where once the core light codex was projected in holy recursion. Now it was silence. No mantras, no memory, just wind and leaking algorithms. He'd found the Archive of Loss, or rather, they'd found him. They arrived through open channels, not people, frequencies, specters of signal. They didn't show faces, only voices, half decoded. Their temple was mobile, coded into broken satellite arrays, riding pulse bands like monks on roads of dust. One of them spoke in his mind, filtered through a decayed voice codec. You carry the shard. You carry the fracture. I carry the beginning, Hal replied aloud, though no one stood there. And the end, the voice said. They offered him sanctuary, obscurity, a place outside the collapsing mythologies. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted ignition. So he climbed. Each level of the cathedral was a fossil of belief. Data icons smeared with mold. Prayer nodes torn out for scrap. A fresco painted in machine oil and ash, depicting the first upload. He passed them all, without stopping. At the top, he found the spire socket, an old projection crown designed to beam core truths to the skyline. Obsolete now, unused since the collapse. But the archive had given him the patch. He inserted the shard. It hissed, then clicked. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then, light. It wasn't violent, not a burst or explosion, just awakening. Across the skyline, ancient panels blinked awake. Neon ribs lit up in skeletal towers. Broken drones began to hum soft lullabies. Somewhere, a child laughed, hearing a voice that used to belong to their mother. The message had spread. Not just Elias's confession, but all the corrupted files, unfiltered, unclean, raw memory, some glorious, some monstrous. Truth in all its ruin. The church's silence fractured. In Drownspire, priests wept openly. Some walked into the ocean. Others removed their veils and stood in the rain, waiting to be erased. But erasure didn't come. Only noise. A new kind of chant, uncoded, full of errors, full of life. Hal stood beneath the open sky, hair soaked, eyes hollow. He didn't smile. There was nothing triumphant in it, only a kind of release. The shard stopped pulsing. It was empty now. Below, in the flooded streets, 1,000 lights shimmered, torches, screens, eyes. They were watching. He turned away from the spire, his coat dragging through broken glass. There was nothing left to say, just echoes and the slow return of memory.